Today we'll be talking about the verbs that end with AR in Spanish, conjugating AR verbs in the present tense. First, just an overview of Spanish verbs. There are 4 different classes of verbs in Spanish. AR verbs, which is what we're talking about today, ER, IR, and irregular verbs. The AR, ER, and IR refer to the endings of the verbs when they're in the infinitive form. The infinitive is the most basic form of the verb, which is how you'll see it listed in the dictionary and in your vocabulary lists that you learn in your textbook. Each of these 4 classes of verbs has its own conjugation pattern. AR, ER, and IR verbs have a conjugation pattern that you can memorize that will apply to every regular verb in that class. Irregular verbs you'll have to memorize individually. The conjugation, when I use the word conjugation, I'm referring to changing the forms of the verb depending on the subject. So for example, in English, with the verb to be, the conjugations are am, is, are, etc. That's what we mean when we talk about conjugating a verb, is changing the form depending on the subject of that verb. So let's look at the conjugations of the verbs, of AR verbs in the present tense. Standard AR verb endings in the present tense for yo, o, tú, has, él, ella, usted, ha, nosotros hamos, vosotros habéis, ellos, ellas, ustedes, han. So what we're doing here is for an AR verb, you'll take off the AR ending and add these endings depending on the subject of the sentence. So here, if the subject of the sentence is yo, you'll take off the AR ending and add the ending o. Let's look at an example verb. The verb tomar, to take, is an AR verb, a regular AR verb. So the stem is TOM. That's the part that won't change in each of the conjugations. The ending is AR. So we'll take off the ending AR and use the stem TOM in each of these conjugations. Yo tomo, tú tomas, él, ella, usted toma, nosotros tomamos, vosotros tomáis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes toman. You'll want to get used to this way of looking at verbs and these conjugation charts. If you check the course documents folder, here in this course you can find charts that you can print up and fill in the conjugations of verbs, so that you can keep them in a binder and refer to them or practice them as needed. Now let's look at some of these verbs in context and how they would work in a sentence. So you'll notice for the first sentence the subject is yo, so the ending is o. That common ending for AR verbs in the present tense if the subject is yo. Yo hablo español. If the subject is tú, tú no hablas italiano. You'll notice there I made this statement negative simply by adding no directly before the verb. That is, in Spanish, that is the pattern for creating a negative sentence. Instead of using the word not, like we do in English, you simply say no and put it directly before the verb. Tú no hablas italiano. Next sentence, the subject is nosotros, we use the amos ending. Nosotros estudiamos mucho. Ellos no estudian mucho. Again, making the statement negative by adding no before the verb. Mi amigo compra los libros en la librería. Because the subject is the third person, so it would be the equivalent of él or ella. Mi amigo, my friend, could be replaced by the subject pronoun él or ella, so we use that third person singular ending, a. Mi amigo compra los libros en la librería. Next sentence is the same. Because Ramona is third person singular, that could be replaced by the él or ella subject pronoun, we would use that conjugation, the a ending. Ramona no compra los libros. And finally, let's look at how you would create a question with these verbs. Instead of using the helping verb do to ask a question, do you speak French? Instead, we simply make it a question by adding question marks. ¿Hablas francés? No, yo no hablo francés, is the response. Here you'll see there are two no's in the sentence. One to make the sentence negative, like we had above with tú no hablas italiano, to make the verb negative, saying that that's not true. And one is simply responding to the question. So in English we would say, no, I don't speak French. In Spanish, because we have the initial no and also the no taking the place of not, you'll have two no's in that sentence. No, yo no hablo francés.